This happened last session. Random scarf in the woods. Everyone was like, ooh, it must be here for a reason. And we spent way too much time investigating and climbing trees and searching around. And
I just wanted to be mean. I 100% just was like, I wonder how long they'll...
And I was on.
I know. you were fine. That's why I'm saying I'm not going to sit here being like, haha, I got you guys. I'm the superior DM. No, we have a specific relationship where I give you plot hooks and you take them because you guys are nice and don't just ignore plot hooks I give you. I abused that for my own entertainment. Doesn't make me big brain DM. It makes me mean.
Welcome to Monsters Multiclass, your Dungeons and Dragons fix. I'm Kevin Odie.
I'm Jared Bornagle.
And I'm Will Melton.
And we'll be hanging out with you for a while to talk about anything and everything D&D related. On this episode, we're taking a look at the Warlock Wizard Multiclass, Duergar Part 2 from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, and then another segment of Ask Monsters in Multiclass where we discuss Session 0. So pull up a chair and stick around for a while.
I gotta say, that was a lot of words that we've stumbled with in the past, and you killed it, Kevin. That was a good one.
Thanks. Yeah, we've hit the 2-year mark, right?
Yep.
There we go. That's what it takes. 2 years of saying basic words in the English language every 2 weeks. And then we get it.
Yes, because you know that Duergar and Mordenkainen are just regular English words that we use on a daily basis.
Those words, okay.
Yes. No more Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes? Tome of Foes. All right. So, our multi-class this episode is the Warlock Wizard. Warlocks are the weird casters who get their powers from a pact with a greater being. But unlike clerics, there's no connection to a god. Usually it's a fey being, a demon, an eldritch being, or some celestial entity. Mechanically, they get a lot less slots, and spells, but they all come back on a short rest. And as I've said many times before, they are Will's very favorite class, and what he considers to be the only full caster in D&D 5e. Wizards are really the opposite end of the spellcaster spectrum. They get their power through hard work and studying. Wizards also get a ton of spells and ways to learn new ones. They get, I guess, as many spell slots as any other real full caster, and a way to get at least some back on a short rest. So multi-classing requirements are going to be 13 charisma from Warlock and 13 intelligence, which isn't too terrible, but let's go ahead and get some first thoughts. Kevin, how are you feeling about this one?
I think this one has some interesting role-playing that could be done if you want to just kind of stick to the archetypes and figure out how to mash them together. Mechanically, I'm not super excited. You were just saying that the int and charisma is not a huge deal. I think that actually is what ruins this. It makes it really hard for good synergy here.
Fair enough. Will?
I totally get it. You start your life as a wizard and realize this is really lame. I want to be a real full caster. You multi-class into Warlock. It totally forgivable. As a intentional multi-phase choice, and not doing a whole lot for me. The int charisma run in doesn't do much, and there's just, we've said this how many times before, you can't synergize great with two full casters because you can only do so much full casting in a round.
Yeah, quite true. I think from a general mechanic standpoint, these two classes do come up quite often as small dips. A small dip into Wizard gets you, some really good first level spellcasting. I'd say the best first level spellcasting of any of the spellcasters, as you get like 6 spells, some ritual casting, and whatever else. Warlock
4 cantrips, I think.
Warlock might not be the best from a spell standpoint, mechanically at first level, but you do get the best cantrip or damage cantrip in the game, which is Eldritch Blast. You get a first level spell slot that comes back on a short rest, and 2 spells known, as well as just some, I think, light armor proficiency.
Yes. Yeah, Warlocks get light armor proficiency, unless you go Hexblade and then you get medium.
Right. I don't know if that comes on multi-classing. Like if you go, okay, yeah, it does. So
that was one of my. So when I said this isn't that interesting, I guess anything more than just like a 1-level dip, maybe a 2-level dip, because wizard and you take a 1-level dip in a warlock, you get light armor, which is just nice. You could get access to Eldritch Blast, though it will have to be cast as charisma, so that's kind of annoying. And then you get 2 spell slots, 1st level spell slots that you get back on. No, just 1-level spell slots. You get it back on a short rest, and then your first. So yeah. That would probably, yes, even that's questionable. Just one spell slot per short rest. As you get higher, that's gonna.
I think I'd be hard pressed to suggest a 1-level dip into Warlock really ever, but like a small dip, maybe 2 even. I could see that working at least somewhat okay, because then you get invocations and there's some interesting stuff there, and you get your 2 spell slots, so that at least starts to feel a bit more worthwhile.
When you say you don't think you'd ever recommend a 1-level dip ever, do you mean for a wizard?
I'd say
for any class, a 1-level dip into Warlock's not worth it.
Anything besides Hexblade.
Okay.
I would go as far as saying that the 2-level dip justifies itself just too well to avoid.
Right. Yeah. And I'm taking in the role-playing perspective of that as well. There's something that just does not sit well with me taking a single level in Warlock. And that just always seems a little weird to me.
But 2 levels is A-okay?
It's better. It's getting better.
See, at that point, there's no different. I would just... It's less...
I mean, yeah, I'm not coming side here, but I get what Jared is saying entirely. It's like, you can't half-ass a pact with the devil, man. You just can't do it.
2 levels to me is like enough time for you to like realize, fully sit down and read the terms and conditions and realize that you agreed to something you don't want. So before you get that pact of the whatever, where I feel like it's like entering into that long-term committed thing with a patron, it's like 2 levels in and you're like, oh, wow, this is way more than I bargained for and I need to find a way out. So that's really all that I'm coming from there is I could see a story arc being contained within 2 levels. Just one, I don't know, some reason it doesn't seem like enough.
That seems really just kind of like a minor thing, but sure.
Yeah. I mean, what do you want me to say? That's how opinions work, Kevin. Sometimes they're stupid. That said, Warlocks do also get their patron abilities at 1st level, and I don't think we can ignore that either. Most of them are pretty good, even if they're not all Hexblade, where you get them and you're like, wow, I'm a totally different character. But most of them do have abilities that I just like, aside from the Undying.
Yeah. Most of them aren't bad. It just kind of depends, is it worth slowing down your wizard progression for? Which is a big cost because it slows down your spells that you get. Yeah.
I would say from a purely mechanical standpoint, I don't think there would really ever be a time where it would be worth it to slow down your wizard spell levels for whatever you get at the beginning of Warlock. Ever. I mean, I don't get why you do it.
It's not front-loaded enough.
Yeah, not for a wizard.
It's something that you do neglect because you think in very abstract terms off the table, but on the table, getting a 7th level spell, getting an 8th level spell, getting a 9th level spell is game changing. At least initially. And yeah, you're delaying that for temp hit points when you kill something. I don't know.
Yeah. I think the only reason to justify a dip into Warlock here is really going to be role-playing wise. And just, well, this fits into it, but if you just have a character concept where it makes sense, I will argue to some extent that this whole idea of you delay getting 7th level spells for a level. You're really not going to notice that, I think, as much as we make it sound, because that's like one level break where maybe other party members are casting 7th level spells and you're not there yet. I don't know. I just don't feel like in actual play that is really that drastic. Like the cleric's just kind of sitting there like, oh, you don't have 7th level spells. Like it just doesn't come up. It's fine.
I mean, that's true.
He might.
It's just what are you getting out of it? Because there's also then the cost of needing to also focus on charisma. You can't just that's not the only cost of losing a wizard level. You know, have to focus on charisma as well as intelligence. And most of the stuff is going to require both. There's always the argument if you're like a fighter and you multiclass into wizard because you don't want to be an eldritch knight, and you could kind of ignore intelligence just by taking spells that don't require it. That's fine, but like if you are mainly a wizard, you're going to need intelligence. You can't get around that. And if you're going out warlock, the type of stuff that you look at getting usually benefits from high charisma, such as the argument of, oh, well, it gets you permanent access to Eldritch Blast that will go with your character level. It's like, great, but it'll always be cast with charisma. And if you just have it at 13...
You're probably going to struggle
that's pretty
a little.
weak. Yeah. And that's same if you go, if you go Hexblade, or you can now attack with your charisma, with your sword or whatever, and you may not even want to do that as a wizard. It actually doesn't mesh all that great with blade singing. And again, if your charisma is just 13, it's not really that beneficial. It'll be easier to get dex higher and just use your dex with a finesse weapon.
That's fair. Now that said, if you're planning on this from the get-go, and because looking at a wizard, normally, as you said, they're going to need intelligence. A secondary stat, usually dexterity, so that way they can get their AC up to something respectable. And then what's after that? Wisdom, maybe, but just because you have the saving throw in it, so might as well. I would say that if you're ignoring strength, you're ignoring wisdom, it's not too hard to get at least 16 in charisma, 20 in intelligence, and then something in your dexterity. We'll say 16 as well. I don't know, just throwing out numbers at that point. But once you're getting to that 16 range and you have +3 to your attacks, it's at least becomes serviceable, where you don't feel like you're just wasting your time. When it's like a +1 or +2 to attack, you're basically never going to hit it. But, I could see going for the Eldritch Blast just to have, again, it scales with your levels. So at level 11, you're making 3 attacks. If you have 16 in charisma, that's +3. And then I believe at that time you'd have +4 to your proficiency. So +7 to hit. That's not too bad. And then if you're not focusing so much on the damage aspects of it, because you're not concerned with the DPS, Eldritch Blast does have a lot of these great abilities, like the pushing and pulling invocations that I can't remember the name of. But I always really like those just for battlefield control. And I guess there's something there. I don't think you're going to be super well optimized, and I don't think the synergy is really doing too much. But again, if you have that class or that character concept in mind, that's a way to go about it without feeling that weak.
That kind of worries me. That I feel like the character concept is going to be you pasting something over to get Eldritch Blast.
That's fair. I think when I was looking through this, there's really not too many that we haven't talked about before. The Wizard and the Warlock both really fit. Their flavor is very much so baked in. And with the Warlock, it's always this idea of wanting power, making a deal with somebody, getting Eldritch Blast. And I think that fits pretty well with the Wizard, in the sense that they're also kind of seeking knowledge, seeking power. And something that I don't see talked about that often is how difficult it would be to actually keep learning as a wizard, because it's just assumed that, oh, well, I'm just studying in my downtime, and oh, look at that, I discovered how to use the wish spell just from killing stuff on the regular. But I could see having that be a part of your character, is that you're struggling to learn more. You can't find more information, and so you turn to nefarious methods, maybe a deal with the devil, take your couple levels in Warlock, and whereas you're doing them a service, and then from there you get over that hump and can continue on with Wizard. And what I like about that is the Warlock levels almost become a punishment, because now you have to not hit the top levels of Wizard. You'll never get to, maybe you take only 3 levels, and so you'll still get 9th level spells, but you're not going to get all this spell mastery because you went the easy way. And because you went the easy way and you couldn't do it, you'll never be the greatest wizard. You'll always be a pretty good wizard who now has some shitty Warlock levels.
What kind of masochistic concept is that?
Some people don't just play D&D to be the most powerful. They do it to make an interesting character.
Like purposely like excluding yourself from class features. Ah, yes. This has taught me so many lessons about the nature of hard work.
I feel like you're saying this sarcastically, but I'm like, yeah, totally.
No, I'm not. I'm only half sarcastic. Yeah, if you want to do that, go for it.
That's true, but that's not really what our show here is about. I mean, we talk about what works, how are these multiclasses going to work together? What are your options? Because that's an argument to be made with every single multiclass, and we've shit on a lot of multiclasses over the past 2 years. And every single one of them will go back to, but yeah, if you have a character concept and don't care that the character sucks, just do it. So that doesn't give Warlock Wizard a pass. It's just...
No.
It's another one of those.
I feel like I'm in crazy land here. I guess I don't know the concept of our show. Can we just start over? What is our show about? What are we doing?
I don't know. Something about optimizing dumb multiclasses. But I will say this. I will counter Kevin's point with this combination makes more sense than probably any other Warlock combination in a weird way, because you would be most exposed to this kind of forbidden knowledge. There's like a narrative temptation for wizards to fall to the devil that supersedes a lot of other crappy combinations.
Yeah, and I say for role-playing wise, it does make sense for a wizard to come in contact with that and pursue it, especially if they're starting to feel the need for a shortcut, or they're in a very competitive environment and feel like they're being left behind. Stuff like that. Or on the flip side, a warlock who realizes they can increase their power by also getting to the academic side of Arcana and not just what's given to them from their patron.
Yeah, what you were saying, Will, with the wizard is the one who's most likely to get into this type of thing. I did like the idea of a divination wizard who is, doing readings, doing whatever, just studying this, like, the great beyond type deal, and then accidentally sees something that they shouldn't and gets their brain broke with the great old one patron. And I feel like that's really fitting for the divination specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. You could go with all these kind of combinations. Necromancers, meeting Orcus,
Yeah.
You are not limited in surface area that overlaps on these two. That's for sure.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying, that the first thoughts were there's definitely some cool role play. But mechanical, I'm not seeing the benefit. It would need to be just a purely role play choice, which is fine, but that could be set for any multi-class combination. That's all I was saying earlier, Jared. We don't give any other multi-class a pass just because, oh yeah, it has good roleplay, so this is great. We try and talk about what makes it work or what doesn't work.
Right. Mechanically, it doesn't work that great. All I was talking about was the roleplay.
Okay, it sounded like you're trying to give it a pass. Like, oh, it's okay because of this, and this, and it's okay that you don't want it optimized. It's like, well, sure, of course it's okay.
Just trying to
that's not our discussion.
I was just trying to share a cool character concept.
Yeah.
It's 2 years in. We're not giving passes on fucking multi-classes anymore.
And saying that from a mechanical standpoint, you can get your charisma up to something that is at least serviceable. It doesn't have to be 20. It can be 16. And playing a charismatic wizard is a different character concept that people normally avoid in order to raise their dexterity or raise their wisdom, something that isn't actually necessary for the class.
Right.
No, you're absolutely right on that. But it is kind of nerfed. And a lot of features in both of these classes are level dependent and main stat dependent. So, you're going to get a little bit screwed by the level on all the features. You're going to do okay on the main stats. You could probably get portent dice into your warlock.
Nothing wrong with that.
One level wizard dip. Or is it 2 levels?
It's 2 levels.
2. Yeah.
Don't though.
So, in terms of why some things don't work, so like say Hexblade and Blade Singing, those are 2 where it seems like, oh, they should work, but you're just kind of giving up on too much, I think. So like with Warlock with Hexblade, it's using, again, going back to, you could use your charisma for attacking and stuff like that, but if you're just going like 1 level in the Warlock to grab Hexblade's curse Like, is it really worth getting your charisma up to 13, or should you just be 16, or getting your dex up there, which will ultimately have the same impact on how you attack? Plus, then the dex has the added benefit of increasing your AC and dex saving throws and stuff like that. Also, then with Blade Song, you can't use a shield, you can't use medium armor, which Hexblade gives you, so that's all kind of wasted.
Yeah, that's the part I think that hurts it the most.
Yeah, so, and then going Blade Singing does give you the proficiency you need in a weapon and the light armor anyways. So all of that stuff about Hex Warrior, we're using charisma and your proficiency and blah, 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 kind of like it's not really useful. So basically your 1 level dip becomes getting access to Hexblade's Curse, which is not bad, but is it worth a 1 level dip for a once per short rest? You could add your proficiency bonus to damage rolls against a target when it's applied. Crit on 19 or 20 if the target dies. Regain a bit of hit points.
What about the other way around, though? Like a 2-level dip into Blade Song? Because then that at least I think has some benefit. You don't need to have your AC up to... so you get a bonus to your AC equal to your intelligence modifier. As long as that is plus 2 or 3. Really, it has to be plus 3. If it's not plus 3, then you might as well wear a shield. And that's just pointless. Your walking speed increases by 10 feet. Okay. The big thing is you gain bonus to any con saving throws made to maintain concentration on a spell. Bonus equals your intelligence modifier.
Yeah, it's like it's so focused on intelligence.
Yeah. Where it's like if you could get your intelligence higher, I don't know how you would. If you're a warlock and you find a headband of intellect, sure, I guess this becomes worthwhile. But I am not going to go down that route.
Yeah, I mean, you can absolutely.
That's great. You find a headband of intellect and you force elves to teach you the ancient ways of Blade Song.
Hey, that's going to be outdated pretty soon here once Tasha's come out. Because I'm pretty sure they're removing the elf restriction on the Blade Song.
It says it in bold letters. I'm going to stick to it. Elves only.
So you can definitely start a character using point buy that has 16 in both charisma and intelligence. That's not a problem. And then, because there's plenty of races that give you a boost to each.
Right.
And then if you're mainly Hexblade, every ability score improvement, you put it into charisma to get that up to 20. And then you still have plus 3 in intelligence. So you could take your 2-level dip here when your Blade Song is activated, which is, I can never remember. How frequently can you do this?
Twice per short rest.
Okay, so that's pretty good. You'll get plus 3 to AC, movement speed increased by 10 feet, advantage in acrobatics checks, and plus 3 to con saving throws for concentration. I mean, that's actually pretty okay.
The thing that I like about that is usually at some point a caster is going to take War Magic or the 1 feat that gives you proficiency in con saving throws if you don't have it. I don't remember. It's just like a general feat that you can choose a stat to become proficient in saving throws.
Yeah.
This stacks with those so that if later on you want to take those feats anyways, you're still getting the plus to your con saving throws. So if you really want to be just maintaining concentration, this will help. It's not hurting.
Yeah, you can kind of really cheese it where, I don't know, cheesing it's the right word, just optimizing it. Go Variant Human. You get your starter feat, make it Warcaster, or I think it's called Resilient, the feat.
I think you're right.
Where you pick one.
Yeah.
So give yourself your boost that way to advantage or proficiency with it. And then Variant Human gets plus 1 to 2 stats. So you make it Intelligence and Charisma, point by 15 in each to get him up to 16, and you're well on your way. Variant Human's just too strong. It just kind of trumps everything.
And what I always like to remind about Resilient, which you are correct, that's what it is. You do get plus 1. It's a half feat. So you get plus 1 to Constitution, and you get proficiency in the saving throws. So it's a really good feat.
Yeah.
And again, makes the stat overlay pretty easy. And I guess what I was trying to say with int and charisma isn't too hard. It's more of that compared to something like the monk and a wizard, where it's you just need dex and you need wisdom and you need intelligence. That's impossible to make a legitimately good character. You're going to hold back your party in some fashion. I don't think this is going to hold back your party. I think it's not going to be as good as a straight wizard. I don't think it's going to be as good as a straight warlock, but I don't think you're going to be as bad as a monk.
A ranger paladin.
Yeah.
Did we do that one yet? That's a 4.
Yeah.
Strength,
We
dexterity,
did at
wisdom, and
least-
charisma.
We did one of those, and it was rough.
Yeah. Yeah, the four ability score improvements. Not ability score improvements. 4 ability requirements are tough. All right. So yeah, there's a build where mainly Hexblade dipping into Wizard. Because also along that way, you get, 6 spells known, 3 cantrips. Yeah, it's first level is 3 cantrips known.
And you don't need a damage cantrip. Those are all just going
Right.
to be like flavorful, like, get your mage hand, get your prestidigitation, and something else. There's no reason to take anything because force damage is like, when is that going to be resisted? Just go with Eldritch Blast.
Right. Yeah, and then 6 first level spells, which is just a lot of versatility there. You can cast them with your Pact Magic through a Warlock as well. And
Gives you
then
some more spell
if
slots.
You go, 2 level, you have 3 additional spell slots that refresh on a long rest. So you got your 2 per short rest as a Warlock, 3 per long rest. You're right. It's actually not bad. Maybe we're a little quick on this one.
Always. I don't know what's wrong with you guys. It's like, whatever. Now, what if you were doing... Let me start that sentence over. You could probably also do a Warlock who is not Hexblade and benefit from Blade Song at least a little bit. Because I think the Blade Song is pretty worthwhile. You can totally ignore Dex, and you just get some nice benefits from it if your AC is going up, walking speed, and, again, that Constitution save. There's no, that's like a terrible flavor thing if you're like, oh yeah, I do the Blade Song, but I ignore the swingy parts. I'm still casting cantrips. It's pretty shitty from that aspect, but mechanically, I don't know, it seems kind of worth it.
Does it seem worth it, or does it seem like, oh yeah, I could see you doing that and not just be confused as hell?
Well, I'd still be confused.
At least a little, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, remember, there were actually warlocks who used weapons before Hexblade came out.
Yeah.
Maybe you're like
called
your
fighter dips.
your parents remember it. Maybe.
Yeah, it was called dipping and fighter, and we liked it.
And taking Pact of the Blade boon.
Yeah.
Though that would actually wouldn't even be necessary, because the big thing with that is it gives you that kind of magical weapon you could summon and stuff.
Right.
That you're proficient in, but it still can't be like a 2-handed weapon or anything like that if you want to use it with Blade Song.
Mm-hmm.
And then Blade Singing just gives you that proficiency anyways.
So what's kind of interesting
You're right.
is you're kind of right on that. So what you could end up doing is you do a weird pact insanity thing where you get Pact of the Chain and Pact of the Tome and Pact of the Blade in a way, because Pact of the Tome gives you some wizard stuff, which you get out of your wizard dips.
Right.
Yeah.
Pact of the Blade you kind of don't need with blade singing, and so you find familiar. And
Fuck
Sweet,
you.
man.
I'm getting
Issue.
all of the packs.
Yeah.
but
I
the
get
issue
super
is your
familiar.
invocations.
Right. Now you're limited
Your
to...
invocations are dependent.
Oh man, I hate being limited to Pact of the Chain invocations. Oh, such...
No, those are great.
I
Don't get me
know.
wrong. Those are good.
But you couldn't get your second
the
attack.
Hexblade ones are off the chain, bro. Jeez.
It was so intentional.
I know. I feel so bad.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be able to get your second attack, and I think unless you went 6 levels into Wizard, which is not the intent of this. So that would be a pretty big problem with not going Pact of the Blade.
That's a good point. What is that,
What's
Thirsting Blade?
the Thirsting Blade's the 12th level one that's been just insane.
No, that's Life Drinker, where you could add your charisma. to
Life
your-
Drinker. Yes, that's what it is.
Yes. Thirsting Blade, I'm pretty sure, is the extra attack. Yeah, 5th level Pact of the Blade, you get an extra attack. If you take Thirsting Blade. Yeah, otherwise there's no real good way to do it unless you go all the way 6 levels into Blade Song. So you'd still probably end up taking your Pact of the Blade feature.
Right, which now you've got some overlap, as we discussed, and all you're getting out of it is really good low-level spell casting and a Blade Song.
I still don't like Blade Song. I just don't like it, man.
I don't like the fact that we're sitting here talking about 2 full spellcasters and we're like saying, oh yeah, one of the best ways to do this is make it a martial class.
Make it a martial class. Don't hit anything with your weapon.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
But as I looked more and more into these other schools for wizard, they just don't really make sense. Like evocation, you get nothing that really benefits the warlock class from what is considered one of the better wizard subclasses, because warlocks don't get that many evocation spells. And even if they do, they don't really affect people in the way that evocation spells are helpful, because that gives you the spell sculpt. So it's great for fireball, but why do you need that for warlock? Just doesn't matter. Divination, as we discussed, is of course great. Abjuration, we've discussed a million times, is really bad for a dip because it scales very, very linearly.
Mm-hmm. Enchantment would match up with like a Fey Warlock role-playing wise. Like that Hypnotic Gaze isn't terrible, but the one level into the Fey Warlock kind of is a similar thing anyways. We could charm somebody.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of the enchantment, the Hypnotic Gaze. Because that's you spend an action, choose a creature that's within 5 feet of you, a spot that you really don't want somebody to be in. If the target can see or hear you, it must succeed a wisdom saving throw against your wizard spell save or be charmed. Its speed drops to 0 and it's incapacitated. And I guess, yeah, if it takes damage, it gets out of there. If you move more than 5 feet away, it breaks it. You really just have to stand next to somebody and just hope that they don't pass the save. And I feel like that's not usually worth it.
Yeah, I mean, so in combat, it would be sacrificing your wizard's turn to lock one creature down, which is just because you can maintain it using your action round after round.
Right.
They don't have to remake the save, though, I'm pretty sure.
You are right. Yep, I jumped
so
ahead there.
I still don't know if it's worth the wizard's action, but I see it more as a good out-of-combat ability, especially in like stealth situations and things like that.
Okay, that's fair. And also, if you have a spell out that lets you command it using a bonus action, I don't see why you couldn't do both. So that you could lock somebody down with your action and then use your flame sphere to whack people.
Yeah.
It's okay. This one was a little harder to justify, but the School of Conjuration, the 2-level dip, I'm not sure if that's really worthwhile. Just about ever. That just lets you make a small inanimate object. Can't be larger than 3 feet on a side, weigh no more than 10 pounds, must be non-magical, and it radiates a dim light. Anyways, not a huge fan of that one, but at the 6th level, the Benign Transposition, I feel like that's just a good ability, but I don't know if it really meshes with Warlock specifically. So you can use your action to teleport 30 feet, or you can swap places with somebody. That just seems good to have in general, but unless you're like, going that Hexblade Warlock and trying to really rely on positioning, I don't see how it meshes with Warlock.
Yeah, and going Conjuration doesn't seem worth it.
No. Especially not 6 levels into it.
Right. And then there's always the classic war magic that always comes up in multi-classing discussions. And like a Hexblade war magic there is benefit there, like Arcane Deflection. You could, as a reaction, give +2 bonus to your AC or +4 to saving throws. Like if you're a Hexblade up in the fray, attacking things, who's not going to be casting every turn. Because then if you use that, you can only use a cantrip until the end of your next turn.
Right.
So, all right, that's kind of a nice thing to have for any sort of martial character.
Yep.
In tactical wit, being able to add your intelligence to your initiative rolls. Power Surge doesn't exist. And then if you go all the way to durable magic, where you maintain concentration on a spell, you have +2 bonus to the AC and all saving throws. And that's kind of a nice thing, but it's 10 whole level, so you probably won't get to it.
Yeah.
I thought you said gerbil magic.
Oh.
I don't have anything to add to that. Just neat. Yeah, gerbil magic. Sure.
How we feel about war magic. Power Surge doesn't exist. Gerbil magic.
We've definitely talked about it in the show, and we don't need to go in detail. Power Surge, though, is the 6th level ability. That's where if you, whenever you successfully dispel magic or counterspell, you gain 1 power surge. And if you finish short rest out them, you gain 1. And once per turn, when you deal damage to a creature or object with a wizard spell, you can spend 1 power surge to deal extra force damage. That extra damage is equal to half your level. It's a very small amount of damage. It's like casting dispel magic and counterspell is kind of a rarer thing. It's like it's an entire ability dedicated to, like, when you get it, doing 3 damage once per short rest.
I could see using that as a DM, like making an NPC that already has 4 power surges with like no need to explain it. And that would work fine as an enemy, sure. But as a player, I've never heard a positive experience with power surge.
Nah, like, I mean, those are both 3rd level spells. I know counterspell is dispel. Yeah, they're both 3rd level. So I mean, until you get really high, those are kind of a big deal. You don't even get that until 5th, and then you just have like 1 or 2 slots for a while. And it's often like 3rd level spells is a very competitive spell slot. Like Fireball is in that, and others.
This is the type of stuff that I look at. I look at now. If you want another 3rd level spell, that's good. Haste. It's always my go-to.
Yes, yeah.
But this is something that I look at now and think that based on the direction they're taking new subclasses, I would see this one having a proficiency bonus rider to it, where you have, after a long rest, up to your proficiency bonus in power surges, and you can get some back if you use counterspell or dispel magic. Like, the idea of just giving 1, it's like they didn't even play test this.
Right. You can, even if you, like a level 20 wizard, it's each power surge allows you to do 10 damage.
Yep.
Like, that's not a crazy amount. And I know it's auto damage, and anytime automatic damage that like can't be resisted or rolled against comes up, it's always super, super low. Like, Wizards of the Coast is like kind of afraid of it. And I do get the mentality, but I think it's overtuned. They've lowered auto damage so much that it's just like never really worth it.
But it's not even like they had something to be afraid of, because look at the Empowered Evocation, the 10th level ability from School of Evocation. Beginning at 10th level, you can add your intelligence modifier to 1 damage roll of any wizard evocation spell you cast. That is doing a whole lot more than Power Surge is throughout a day.
That's true. Yeah, I guess with Power Surge, you still need a hit. You choose to spend it when you hit.
Right.
Yeah, so
they
there's
phrased
still that
it in a way where it seemed a lot less connected to that, but it's still, it's just dumb.
When you deal damage, yeah.
But, I mean, Empowered Evocation, you cast Fireball.
Yeah.
You have +5 to your intelligence. You're doing 5 damage to every enemy you hit. That's going over the 10 that a 20th level War Magic caster can do.
Yeah, and it's once per turn, right? Empowered Evocation?
No, it's just not even a limit.
Oh, you just do it. Okay.
Yeah.
So like every time you cast Firebolts, I mean,
damage roll. Yes.
It's not even a leveled spell. So that works for your cantrips too.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think you're right about the proficiency thing. And that's one of the things that I'm kind of not looking forward to, because there's a lot of multi-class implications to starting to tie things to proficiency bonuses.
Yeah, it's true. Changes a lot. We're going to have Monsters and Multiclass 2.0.
Tasha's in multi-class. The sister series to this series where we contradict ourselves on everything.
Or if we wanted to, again, just start separating from the multi-class thing, just do Monsters and Everything.
Monsters and Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let me see here. Let me see if I get any more notes on the Warlock Wizard that is worthwhile. I don't think so.
Just a real general thing, Wizards' options for spells is a lot more than Warlock. So there's just a lot of versatility there by getting access to them. And a 1-level dip gives you access to the spellbook feature, where you could copy down and learn additional wizard spells. You can't go beyond the level that you can know for wizard spells. So 1-level dip, you can only do it for 1st level spells. But that could really expand your versatility.
Yeah.
If only there was a different way for a warlock to get a spell book. That'd be cool.
Darn it.
Oh, can they actually even copy down?
I want to say that's an invocation. I'm the warlock guy. What am I doing today?
Yeah, there's Book of Ancient Secrets if you have the Pact of the Tome.
And you're right. They're not. I mean, it's not a 1-to-1 comparison, but it is certainly. It's got some similarities.
Yeah. The Book of Ancient Secrets Invocation allows you to add ritual tags into it. And so you start off with 2, and then if you find more, you can copy them in the same way that you would as a spell book, basically.
Which is pretty good. I feel like when I look at ritual spells, there's some that are really great. I believe Detect Magic is a ritual spell, and probably one of my favorite ritual spells. But otherwise, you get some that are just like, okay, like the Tensor's Floating Disc, that's a ritual spell.
That spell's
okay, sure.
Game-changingly good.
Please, back that up. I would love to hear your
It's a floating
thoughts.
disc. You can put stuff on it.
Yeah.
It has it. We have used it for sure. We've gotten use out of that spell.
Agreed.
If it cost a spell slot, we wouldn't. So that's the type of thing that's perfect for a ritual. It's very specific. You don't need to have wizards. At least don't need to have it prepared. And if you're a warlock taking this, there's preparing a spell is not a thing. So it's just kind of there to pull out of your back pocket. I love collecting ritual spells as wizards because like you just never know. There's no cost to them.
Yep. I think that is perfectly fair. They just are very specific.
Yeah. Hence why the rituals. All right, and then there was one more thing I wanted to bring up, and we normally don't dive into this type of stuff on the show where like a homebrew fix, but a common homebrew I'll see discussed is making warlocks an intelligent caster instead of a charismatic caster using the intelligence stat. It's common enough, I think it's worth at least discussing in here because that, of course, has major implications for this multi-class. And it actually makes a lot of things super viable, especially Hexblade, because then that just gets absolutely fucking nuts.
No, that sounds
that
great
might
idea.
be
Phenomenal. I love it.
Go on. I know you've been waiting to scream about this. I hinted that we were going to bring this up.
I don't even
yesterday.
know the saying. Anyone who does this or allows this at the table should be banned from the game forever.
Wow.
Here I was worried that there would be like actually something useful in his rant, but nope, just quit playing, sorry.
No, not quit.
Keeping hate
Banned.
vile. It makes sense, like from a roleplay perspective, warlocks being charisma, it does feel a little odd. I think the kind of intent is they needed the charisma to make a good deal with their patron, but that feels a little weak. That's the really only argument I've seen. Because they're not just like pulling power out of the nature of the universe. Like they need to be able to study into these patrons, contact them, kind of negotiate and navigate all that. And to me, that intelligence makes more sense.
I always
then just from a...
Oh, I would say that I always view the charisma aspect from the idea that they have like a strong soul is the only way that I can put it, like a strong force of themselves. And so that's like what allows them to make these connections, and that's it. And I don't know if that like really, that seems like what they're going for, but you know, it's kind of
That works too, as in not being just completely like overcome and overpowered by these patrons,
right?
In a sense, but I mean, that's not what they're trying to do. They're looking to make a deal, give somebody power for. But I don't know. I mean, that's definitely not a bad way to look at it.
Yeah, that's how I viewed it too. You're a conduit for greater powers, and that's more of a force of will kind of thing than nerd stuff.
I like the way you put it there, in that if you were not very charismatic from a stat perspective, then you wouldn't be able to handle the power that surges through, or use it in any effective way.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, you wouldn't like explode into dust, but you would not be a good conduit for the devil or the.
Okay,
right, you might.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You say you wouldn't explode in the dust, but like also that'd be kind of awesome. Like you had to.
Which is a good way to. This
like
is a good way to do it. So your player comes to you with this great idea. Allow intelligence as a warlock thing. You let him take the dip. Dust. Oh man, the charisma was important, man. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. You know, it's crazy. It's like we couldn't have foreseen this at all.
I rolled for it, dude. I swear, I rolled for it.
So you make a good point about the kind of force of will, force of personality there, being able to good conduit for this power greater than you. That does bring up the argument then of why aren't clerics charisma?
It's a different... I see those as kind of two similar but different elements of that force of will. Where... See, this is really hard because I'm totally bullshitting. This is all bullshit. There's no science behind this. But as a cleric...
Whoa. I'm sorry. This is a science-based 5th edition podcast.
How magic actually works in real life with math. Okay. But like as a cleric, you almost bring forth the powers of the god, which is... It is grafting metaphors from the real world. It's like your faith pulls this to the world. Whereas warlocks, it's a more sinister kind of...
But how is that wisdom over charisma?
I don't know. How is that wisdom? Because it's religious, man. I don't know. Well,
but actually, religion is
right?
an intelligence. It's an intelligence skill. Yeah, the only thing that I could think of is that idea of... No, I got nothing. Why?
So there are arguments to be made for Warlock being int-based, and then it also just kind of, within the scope of the classes, we're going to take Artificer out of this for the moment because that didn't exist when 5th edition came out. If Warlocks were intelligent, it fit just really well in the balance of the classes. You had 2 casters for each mental stat. Charisma then would be Bard and Sorcerer. Wisdom would be Druid and Cleric, and then Int would be Wizard and Warlock. And then they also each have lesser casters, where Wisdom gets the Ranger as a half caster, Charisma gets the Paladin, and then Intelligence will get 2 1/3 casters, roughly. Kind of still somewhat in the synergy there.
Sure.
Yeah. But I mean, you kind of had the lesser options of it. But then making Warlock Charisma, it just threw all that out. And Warlock being Intelligence doesn't like break the class. It's just... It almost has very little impact on the class, and then since you have these two full casters now intelligence, it makes intelligence skills more common when they're pretty rare, as is. So there's a lot of good arguments for that. So if you're at a table where you've gone that route, where you've homebrewed warlocks into intelligence-based casters, this multi-class of wizard obviously becomes a lot more viable, because all you have to worry about is intelligence. Because then a Hexblade dip, it allows you to use your intelligence to attack, and all that good stuff, which then works really well with Blade Singing, obviously. Or just, the quick dip into Warlock to get Eldritch Blast when I'll be using your intelligence. Same with any other Warlock spell, and all this just synergizes and works a lot better.
Definitely. I guess I'd be open to giving it a shot. I still don't know if I fully agree with the flavor aspects of it, of like intelligence making more sense and how you'd navigate these deals or these entities.
Like I would kind of, so as you were saying, all right, so it's force of will and personality to channel this power.
Right.
You could say it's full mental acumen.
Okay.
And like the brain power to be able to understand and comprehend what is going through you and harness it. So they're both viable arguments. I'm not saying one's better than the other. Just
to argue the opposite of that, though, just because we recently have played Call of Cthulhu and I've been familiarizing myself with those rules. And that, the smarter you are and the more that you comprehend, the more likely your brain is to break. So I think there actually is a benefit in warlocks being stupid. They're just supposed to be big dumb idiots.
This is where, all right, so we're now firmly in my camp of how I view warlocks as the true master class of D&D. Big dummies that are inured to the dangers of the evils around them by sheer stupidity. And I legitimately do have this belief that intelligence would be negatively correlated with your ability to deal with and even your willingness to enter these pacts.
That's actually a fair point. The smarter you are, the more you're like, why would I ever get mixed up in this?
Especially if you were like fully capable of the wizard path,
Right.
I would never be a wizard. I would be ashamed of being a wizard. I would bring shame to my family. But warlock, I am a unique case, though, I will admit.
As for that, so back to earlier, we're trying to figure out why a cleric would be wisdom-based. I think using this concept of a warlock is really in this like push and pull relationship with the patron, where they're like trying to get power from them, and they're trying to harness that power and use it without it being too much or too little, whatever. Clerics have a very different relationship with their patron, where it's more about a mutual understanding and respect. And from there, I don't think they need that charisma in order to fully manifest it. They need a wide understanding, like a sage-like understanding of the world in order to better utilize it and better understand what their patron actually wants. Whereas I don't think warlocks generally care what their patrons want. They just want what they want from them.
It's really reading into it, but I see wisdom as a skill that grants you a certain level of harmony with whatever you're dealing with. And that's
right.
Really, you see that with cleric, druid, monk.
Yeah. So that's where I'm going to go with that. And in the same way that, you could see intelligence working for a warlock, I guess I could see charisma working for a cleric if you wanted to go down that route of just like, yeah, that's a lot of power to just be inside of you, and you have to have a strong sense of self in order to hold on to it.
Oh, are we doing full gloves on our feet? Let me tell you about my Dex Barbarian. Rage makes him more vulnerable to damage, but it doubles everything else.
I'm not saying you should go switching around stats and everything, but it's at least a fun conversation to have to figure out why these things are like they are. It's really easy to just accept them, but to break it down, to deconstruct the philosophy of the game, Will, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I liked Kevin's semi-mathematical, symbolic breakdown of the various mental skills applied to the various classes. And then it takes like this Lord of the Rings Sauron twist, but one class decided to be a charisma caster.
Two classes for the wisdom. I like it.
Yeah.
That said, I think we're far gone from having any more value to add to the wizard warlock conversation.
Yeah, when us three are bringing up homebrewing, it's actually really done.
Yeah,
I only brought this one up because it's I just see it all the time on like D&D message boards and communities about, can warlocks be intelligence? And yeah, sure, doesn't break anything.
To go more into the mechanics of that, I would be willing to try that at the very least for like a one shot or something. And I'm having this aversion to it because I have this gut feeling of like, but that makes the multi-class way too strong. It makes it way too good. But then looking at, the Polurterer, or looking at the Bard Sorcerer, or any of these ones, Cleric Druid,
Hexblade,
not
Paladin,
so much. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of times where, yes, having the same stat makes them really, really good. In this case, it would make the Hexblade Paladin bad if the Warlock was intelligence-based. So, there's it's like way too big of a pill to swallow that I would need to actually see it in practice.
Yeah.
I don't just trust nerds on the internet. What do they know?
But we are nerds on the internet.
No,
Kevin, I'm in my house.
What do we know?
I'm a charisma podcaster.
All right, and with that, let's go ahead and transition into our promotional minute. So if you are not yet, please subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave a review as well. Helps other people find us and enjoy our lovely dumb shit conversations. Follow us on social media. Let's go ahead with Twitter. That's at Monsters_Multi. On Reddit, we have our Monsters and Multiclass. Where we just hit 500 subscribers. Woo! I'm going off the rails. That's what I get for drinking before 10. Not even drinking. So, that's it. That's everything. Let's get on to the Duergar. And Kevin, you can just splice that however you want.
All right.
Just get one for a different episode.
That's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm not going to sit here and say this is my best work. I feel like I had shit that I wanted to talk about, and it's all gone, so Duergar.
Part 2.
All right, so our monster of the week is going to be Multiple Monster. We're continuing the Duergar section from our episode, 2 episodes back. So if you didn't catch that, recommend going back and giving it a listen for a lot of the Duergar lore and history. This one's probably just going to be focused more on the individual stat blocks. So we'll be going over the Duergar Screamer, Soulblade, Stoneguard, Warlord, and the Zoron. So let's go ahead and start with the Screamer. Duergar Screamer. This is a construct, kind of. Uses sonic energy to grind rock into dust. But the important bit here is that there is actually a Duergar in this construct. In the same way that we talked about the Hammerer, this is just something that they do to punish dissenters. And it just, I don't know, they have weaponized their agony, which is totally normal. Just a thing that every society does.
Yeah, they kind of like the poetic punishments. So like the Duergar Hammerer, it's if they lack work ethic and stuff like that, they get put in this Hammerer suit where they are now forced against their will to hammer at rock all day. That's hard work. The Duergar Screamers, if they're accused of spreading gossip and plotting against things and kind of that silver tongue, they're put in the Screamer and now they're forced to scream at rocks all day. That's not ironic. That's not sarcastic. That's what they do. They sonic scream at rocks to break them up. This one, I don't know. Maybe if we read this one before the Hammerer, I would have liked it. But after reading the Hammerer, this is like, oh, the Screamer is basically the Hammerer with like one change.
Yeah, which is okay. I mean, I'm usually all right with that because it does have the Engine of Pain ability that the Hammerer also has, which is once per turn, a creature that attacks the Screamer can target the Duergar trapped in it. The attacker has disadvantage on the attack roll. On a hit, the attack deals an extra 2d10 damage. But the Screamer can respond by using its multi-attack with its reaction. So it offers up this risk versus reward. You might get 2d10 extra damage, but they get to attack you again, which can be pretty rough. They hit pretty hard, especially for a challenge rating 3. So looking at the rest of their stat block, they are pretty similar to most other Duergar, but they don't get their enlarge or invisibility feature. So AC of 15, HP of 38, speed of 20. They have a strength of 18, which is pretty nice. Immunity to poison, the normal condition immunities of charmed, exhaustion, frightened, paralyzed, petrified, or poisoned for a construct, not for a Duergar. 60-foot dark vision, and the Engine of Pain that we just talked about. Their multi-attack lets them make one drill attack and use their sonic scream. So the drill is +6 to hit, reach of 5 feet, and 1d12 +4 piercing damage, which is pretty good, average of 10 damage. Their sonic scream is the Screamer emits destructive energy in a 15-foot cube. Each creature in that area must succeed on a lowly DC 11 strength saving throw or take 2d6 thunder damage and be knocked prone. I think the prone is probably one of the most important parts there, as the damage itself, 2d6, it's not too bad. That DC, though, of 11, that's just not much.
No, especially not for...
It's an every turn.
Well, it's strength, so I mean,
that's
yeah,
the difference.
If it was its own action and like it could do 2 drill attacks with its multi-attack or the sonic scream, not that great, but it's part of its multi-attack, so every single turn.
Right. What I always have to keep in mind is your party's not going to fight just one of these, really ever. At least they shouldn't. So you're going to have a lot of these coming through. And the same way that we were talking about the ghouls last episode, where sure, it's a DC of 10, somebody's probably going to fail. And when they do, they get a beating.
Yeah, eventually someone else. Especially because it's strength. A lot of characters dump strength.
Right. And not many have...
It's not like it's Constitution or something.
Right. And not many have proficiency in the saving throw.
Right. So I think it'll get some use. Or these are good ones to pepper in with the other Duergar.
Right.
Get the sonic stream off. They just need to be careful because, I mean, it's thunder damage. And I don't think any of the other Duergar have any form of immunity. Like constructs don't have immunity to that or anything, so they could very easily hit each other with this. So it's kind of one of those things to be careful for.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one thing I always love to point out for these types of multi-attacks is remember that the order of them does not dictate how you have to use them. You don't have to drill and then Sonic Scream. If you Sonic Scream first and then successfully knock somebody prone, you do it against 3 people, you only knock one of them prone. Now it lets the Screamer know who it should attack because it's going to hit the one that fell down.
Right.
Get that advantage.
Yep, definitely.
And that I think that does work pretty well as with more Duergar, because again, you knock even one person prone, they become a very big target.
And this does have that weird engine of pain thing, which you mentioned, which the hammer does too. And we talked about that in great length in that episode, so we won't rehash it. But it just seems sort of weird about this actually has a cold shot when nothing else in D&D does. And we, in the last episode, or 2 episodes ago, I should say, kind of went into detail about different ways to handle that.
None of which I remember. So if we started talking about it, it would feel like a fresh conversation to me, which is not good. So, so let's go to the Soul Blade next, because I think that's enough for the Screamer. So the Soul Blades are Duergar warriors who have just mastered their psionic abilities and manifested it in a psionic blade. So they are only a challenge rating 1, but they have a pretty versatile stat block. And I think really the only reason they are such a low challenge rating is because somebody was just not feeling like giving them more armor and hit points. And this could easily be a more difficult fight with just a couple simple changes that I'll talk about after. But to start, AC of 14, HP of 18, speed of 25. Nothing too special to talk about with their stats, just a +3 to dexterity. Everything else is pretty middle of the road. They have their Duergar resilience, so advantage on saving throws against poison, spells, and illusions, as well as resistant to charmed or paralyzed spells or saving throws. They can create a soul blade, so as a bonus action, the Duergar can create a short sword-sized, visible blade of psionic energy. The weapon appears in the Duergar's hand and vanishes if it leaves its grasp or if the Duergar dies or is incapacitated. Which is cool flavor-wise, at the very least, just making a psionic sword. They get some spellcasting, Blade Ward and True Strike. Then some spells. 3 times a day they can cast Jump and Hunter's Mark. And then, of course, Sunlight Sensitivity. So then they have their Soul Blade. They get 1 attack. It is melee weapon attack +5 to hit, reach of 5 feet, 1d6 +3 force damage, or 2d6 +3 if they're enlarged. And if they have advantage on the attack roll, they deal an extra 1d6 force damage. They don't really have too many ways to reliably give themselves advantage, though.
True Strike.
Well, yeah, True Strike, but I don't think it's ever worth it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Is sure they can set up their entire turn by casting True Strike to get 1d6 next turn, or they can just attack twice.
Right. And just put Hunter's Mark on them.
Right.
Which is also concentration.
And that's where it's really killer. Is because Hunter's Mark is, of course, going to be a great idea. And what does that do? It gives 1d6 extra damage.
Right.
So why would you ever cast True Strike for it? Doesn't make sense.
It's almost like a joke. It's like, all right, what are the 2 worst combat cantrips in the game? Blade Ward and True Strike. Give it to the Soul Blade.
Right.
There's like universally panned cantrips.
Here's like one thing that you'd think, all right, this might not be so bad. Invisibility, you're invisible, you cast True Strike for your first advantage strike, but casting it breaks your invisibility.
Yep.
Right.
It's just this 1-2 punch of, just kidding, it's still terrible.
Yeah.
Right. If you just attacked out of the invisibility, that first attack would have advantage anyways.
So
I guess that's another reliable way just at the start of combat.
And that is how I do it, is when coming out of invisibility, great, they get an extra 1d6 force damage because they have the advantage. If they're with other enemies, again, that Screamer knocks somebody prone, great, they have a way of getting the advantage and doing the extra damage.
Right.
But the Blade Ward and True Strike, as you said, they seem to be jokes. Like, why would you ever cast those? That's pointless. unless as the DM, you're like, oh, I want them to be really bad because I'm having this go up against like a brand new party. They've never played D&D before. I'm going to have them waste a turn using True Strike so that way they can see how bad of a spell True Strike is.
Hey Reddit, my party thinks that Blade Ward and True Strike are good. How should I convince them that that's not true? Well, have a team of Soul Blades do nothing for the first turn and then just get destroyed after doing nothing.
Right?
I can say, yeah, only 14 AC and 18 hit points. They don't really have the health and defenses
No.
to like waste a turn.
Not at all.
In case anyone's not aware, real quick, True Strike is a cantrip. It's an action to cast. It's an entire action. It lasts 1 round and it's concentration. You target one creature, and then your first attack roll against the creature on your next turn has advantage. That's it. So you give up an entire action to get advantage on one attack next turn. So even if you have some weird shenanigans where like you manage to do this as a bonus action, as written, and then attack, you wouldn't get advantage because it doesn't come into effect until your next turn. And it's concentration, so it breaks anything else you're concentrating on, such as Hunter's Mark, which the Soul Blade gets. Blade Ward is at least not concentration, but it's a cantrip. It's your entire action. Again, if for 1 round you give yourself resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage.
And there
I feel
are
like there's like
some moments that's useful.
Yeah, but like not many. You're usually going to be better off disengaging and not taking the hit at all. Or something like, unless you are for some reason trying to tank because somebody else needs to do something and you're like holding the line. But if you took Blade Ward for that one very specific instance, I think you'd be all right just taking the dodge action, because then you just might not get hit at all because all attacks against you have disadvantage, and that's cool. I mean, it's just I don't get it.
Yeah.
If you're like about to get shot by somebody with a particularly powerful but non-magical bow that they're really good at using.
As they stare at you, they draw the bow and they say, "I'm about to shoot you."
I'm using True Strike.
Actually, I use Blade Ward. It's like kids fighting on the playground, like making up. Like
True Strike, Blade Ward.
So yeah, not really worthwhile. As for making this into a more, maybe I don't want to say fun monster, but at least a little bit more difficult monster, I do think that is at least pretty simple. Just up the armor class, up the HP, give it multi-attack to Soul Blade, and this thing will last more than a round. I just don't get why they made this challenge rating 1. I feel like there's enough challenge rating 1 Duergar that I didn't need this one to be challenge rating 1.
Right. Boost a little bit, yeah. The multi-attack would make a big...
Yeah, because then your Hunter's Mark's really
difference.
doing some damage. If for some reason it has advantage on an attack, again, something knocks the player prone, then we're talking about, if enlarged, 4d6 plus 3 damage on every hit with the Soul Blade. And that's pretty devastating. And that's like getting into they're cool and do this force damage, and they now fit a specific niche.
Yep.
Why jump too? Like who thought that jump was the spell that they needed to cast 3 times a day?
Yeah, there's not a lot of lore on them. There's one sentence, so
Right.
to base it off of. Soul Blades are Duergar warriors whose mastery of psionics allows them to manifest blades of psychic energy to slice apart their foes.
They're obviously
That's it. So there's nothing like pull from there.
The rogue, they're just really not finished rogues.
Yeah, I might also, if we're looking at, making these things a bit stronger, would probably steal some of those new psionic cantrips. I think there's one in Xanathar's that's like Mind Spike or something like that. Mind Slayer. That might be a leveled spell, I forget. But I think Tasha's is definitely adding some psionic cantrips that would probably be good to look at here instead of Blade Ward and True Strike. Otherwise, because I don't think we specifically said, it does get its enlarge ability and it does get invisibility, just to clearly state that. Next up is the Duergar Stone Guard. So the Stone Guard are elite Duergar troops deployed in small numbers to bolster warbands of regulars or organized into elite strike forces for special specific missions. So they're, good Duergar. They're stronger ones.
Yeah, elite troopers. I mean, in defense, I don't think these ones need more of a description. Elite troopers basically says it.
Right.
Like every faction and race or whatever has their elite troopers. Everyone kind of knows understands
Totally
what that entails.
So what that specifically entails here is 18 AC, one of the higher ones for the Duergar, 18 strength, which is also, again, nice. Duergar resilience, which I won't restate, but then it also gets this phalanx formation. So the Duergar has advantage on attack rolls and dexterity saving throws while standing within 5 feet of a Duergar ally wielding a shield. It was because wielding was right after.
Named Allie.
Yeah.
If she's not named Allie, or him or whoever, if they're not named Allie, you don't get it. I'm sorry.
Nope. Yeah, so
it's really confusing at any social gathering because they're just all named Allie for that reason.
So they do have shields, making it obviously make sense that they are stronger in a group because they're giving advantage on attack rolls for each other and these dexterity saving throws.
Yeah, specifically with other stone guard. And I just really like the flavor of that. It's the idea of the Greek or Roman soldiers forming that phalanx, grouping up, because I don't think any other Duergar just in the base stat block gets a shield. Nope, the Warlord gets a shield. But it would make sense that the Warlord could be a part of this. I don't think, other than the Stone Guard and the Warlord, that any get a shield. So it really makes sense where it kind of adds that they need that skill level, that eliteness, to play into this. Like a Stone Guard standing next to a Hammerer is not going to really get benefit, but other Stone Guards who know how to fight together. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Definitely agree. And so for their actions, they get King's Knife, which I'm assuming is in reference to their specific blade, which in the art looks really cool. It's like a normal short sword, just with jagged teeth on both sides of it. So I guess that's the King's Knife. Again, we don't have more lore than the one sentence they gave us, so gotta make some assumptions here. So that is +6 to hit, 1d6 +4 piercing damage, or 2d6 +4 when enlarged. They also get javelins, which just work like any javelins. They can throw them, they can stab with them. That does fit that whole Spartan mentality, which I like. Yeah, if you want to have it be they're holding the line with shields and spears, great. Javelins are very fitting there.
It does the same damage as their King's Knife.
Right. The exact same, which, again, what is this King's Knife? What's the point of it?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like, if they give it a named thing, it's not just short sword attack or whatever, it's a named thing, there should be something to it.
Yeah.
Just a rider of some kind. It's coated in poison, it's enhanced with psionic energy, and does a bit of extra damage. Just something, but it's quite literally just a short sword attack.
Yeah.
But they call it King's Knife. But there's no explanation anywhere in what that is.
This is
unless we missed it. They're buried somewhere in their chapter at the beginning of Mordenkainen's.
that might we're either incompetent or this is a violation of the Chekhov's gun thing.
Can you elaborate on that?
Chekhov said if you're writing a book and you tell everyone that there's a gun on the mantelpiece, you have to fire that gun.
Gotcha.
Got it. Okay.
Or if your DM tells you that there's a scarf in the woods, then
Yeah, that's
actually
the purposeful subversion of the idea. There's a scarf in the woods. I'm going to watch my dumb players waste time on this.
You guys were not dumb. I set you up. That is not fair. Yeah. I would never call players dumb for taking a red herring that is very much hinted at. That's
This happened last session. Random scarf in the woods. Everyone was like, ooh, it must be here for a reason. And we spent way too much time investigating and climbing trees and searching around. And
I just wanted to be mean. I 100% just was like, I wonder how long they'll...
And I was on...
I know. You were fine. That's why I'm saying I'm not going to sit here being like, haha, I got you guys. I'm the superior DM. No, we have a specific relationship where I give you plot hooks and you take them because you guys are nice and don't just ignore plot hooks I give you. I abused that for my own entertainment. Doesn't make me big brain DM. It makes me mean. So anyways, what is this King's Knife? It doesn't have any actual use. I don't know. Make some flavor to it. Not you guys. Just, whoever's listening, if you're going to use it, throw something crazy on there. We got nothing.
Yeah, I just did... When Mordenkainen is in D&D Beyond, just did the page search for the word King's Knife. Nothing came up. Even the word... I guess king does come up. But.
Well, yeah.
The mystery is beginning to unravel.
Wait, hold on. It's an apostrophe S. I missed that. Kings. Nope, nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just... I just don't...
To add to the mystery, it says short sword. It has the stats of a short sword. It is the height of the stone guard.
Which they're short, so that makes sense.
I get that. But they're still medium.
But I mean, they could wield a long sword. I mean... A rapier.
They can't wield a rapier, Kevin.
And why does it do piercing damage instead of slashing?
Oh, yeah, what?
I think that's...
Because the art looks like slashing.
Well, kind of. It has blood at the point of the sword. So it does look like they've been using it for piercing. But why?
I think short swords can do... I can't remember.
I think this must be a holdover from an old edition, and it's just lore and context we don't have. Because
Will, you literally cannot pierce with a short sword. It's impossible. It's
they
slashing damage
have
only.
rounded tips
Yeah.
to prevent people from doing that.
They wouldn't want you to hurt
They
someone.
got those like styrofoam rubber thingies. Short sword tip in real combat.
And that's what this one has, but on the sides, instead of like the cool teeth blades on the side, those are like covered up because like, we wouldn't want to hurt anybody with that. We just gotta stab them.
There's like plastic guards.
Yeah. Like for a chainsaw. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like there has to be something you could add, but I'm blanking on what could make this cool and fit the art and make it seem worthwhile. So maybe it should just be ignored and we're spending too much time on it. Maybe it's a scarf in the woods.
Or if I know a lot of our listeners also know older editions, so if you know about what this is, the Stone Guard and the King's Knife, let us know.
You keep that shit to yourself.
Obviously don't.
Yes, please tell us. I'm curious, but if I put more brain power into it, I'm going to fry.
All right, moving on.
Yeah.
We don't want you to fry. The Warlord.
Yes, so the Warlord is, I guess, pretty straightforward. It is a Duergar Warlord. They are skilled at leading other Duergar into battle, and they can use spikes of psionic energy to compel Duergar warriors to fight harder. So they come in with a challenge rating of 6, so on the higher end. Armor class of 20. They do have a shield, which again is important for the Stone Guard. HP of 75. Their stats are looking pretty good with 18 strength, 17 con, and beyond that, 12 intelligence, 12 wisdom, 14 charisma. Just not bad all around. Then everything else is the same as most Duergar. They have their Duergar resilience, sunlight sensitivity. For their actions, though, they have multi-attack, which is surprisingly rare for these Duergar, I guess. They get to make 3 hammer or javelin attacks, and uses call to attack or enlarge if it's available. Probably one of the more confusing multi-attacks I've seen, because it's make 3 attacks, and then use the other abilities if you can, because enlarge is a short rest.
Only one of the other.
Right, only one or the other. And call to attack can be done every turn, but enlarge is a short rest or long rest ability.
Right.
So it's like really weird phrasing to just say they make 3 attacks and then either call to attack or enlarge if they can. So for their hammer, they have a psychic attuned hammer, plus 7 to hit, 1d10 plus 4 bludgeoning damage, 2d10 if they're enlarged, and it does 1d10 psychic damage, which is always great if you have a barbarian in the party. Just gets around their resistances. Then they have their javelin, which is a basic javelin once again. Their call to attack ability is up to 3 allied Duergar within 120 feet of this Duergar that can hear it, can each use their reaction to make 1 weapon attack.
That's could be scary. I mean, so that's every turn. It just does that. It's part of its multi-attack. So it gets its like 3 psychic hammer attacks and does this. And then if you have like a Duergar despot nearby, which we talked about last time, those things hit hard.
Yeah,
they got their rocket fists and
that's the challenge rating 12 one. So yes,
Yeah.
you're correct. That would be really, really rough. But if you're fighting a warlord and a despot, you're probably pretty high level and should expect to deal with some of that.
yeah, it's still
Oh
scary.
yeah. That is.
Yeah, or like the Screamer getting its D12 drill attack or something off.
Could those still? Because those are constructs.
Doesn't it say just allied Duergar?
It does.
Allied Duergar within 120 feet. I mean, it's an allied Duergar.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think they'd be more likely to just obey the command.
Yeah. I'll say that, yeah. Because it doesn't, under the, I guess, sub-humanoid part, where it says like medium humanoid, it says dwarf. It doesn't say Duergar. If it said Duergar, then I would have probably seen an argument there.
Right.
But yeah, I'm with you. Could call on whoever. Definitely one of my favorite abilities for commander type roles. It just always seems really fitting to let them either reposition or make an attack, something along those lines. It gives them that concept of they are the warlord. They're the commander of this army.
Mm-hmm. And then it has its reaction, scouring, instruction, which is also pretty unique. When an ally that the Duergar can see makes a d20 roll, the Duergar can roll a d6, and the ally can add the number rolled to the d20 by taking 1d6 psychic damage. If you're immune to psychic damage, you can't be affected.
Interesting.
So it's a reaction, so it's a once per round. The warlord, and the wording's kind of weird of saying the Duergar and the ally. My understanding is when it says the Duergar, it means the Duergar warlord.
Correct.
So when the warlord sees an ally make a d20 roll, the warlord could roll a d6, and the ally gets to add it to the d20 roll, and the ally takes 1d6 psychic damage. I assume it would be the same roll.
Yes.
But that's actually not super clear, but I guess it doesn't matter that much.
It is definitely... Oh, you know what? It wouldn't be the same roll. I feel like most people would just use the same roll, but as it's specified, it would be a different one.
Right.
Makes it a little more swingy, I guess. I do think it's interesting that they use the phrasing, makes a d20 roll. We don't really see that too often. Usually it specifies attack roll, saving throw, or ability check. So that's interesting to me. I don't know if there's anything that falls outside of those three, if this was just their attempt to try and simplify an already confusing text. Because it is. I mean, it's a little weird.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. But yeah, like attack roll, ability check, or saving throw should cover all d20 rolls.
Yeah. I don't know what else they could possibly try doing, but this covers it.
Not like if you roll in a d20 on a spell, it's an attack.
Right.
Yeah. Huh.
I think the only reason why would just be simplicity, but that's like not the point.
But it's the only place that does
it. Which makes it more confusing. And if it said saving throw, attack roll, ability check, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It wouldn't be confusing at all.
This entire chapter is filled with mysteries. This is a breadcrumb trail that we can't ignore.
Maybe, just maybe, when we stare at something for too long, it starts to have meaning that isn't there.
And I like the flavor of this reaction because the whole thing with the Duergar is their psionic abilities and their kind of harshness with each other even. Yeah. And so like a lot of leader warlord type stat blocks have something like call to attack. And this one takes it a step further where it could literally not compulsively, kind of force its will onto an ally in a way that will benefit it, but also hurt the ally.
Right.
Just feels very fitting for the Duergar.
Definitely. I'm a big fan of that. Only other thing to mention for this stat block is their invisibility is a little bit different. It is a recharge ability. I think we've seen that at least one other time, but it just recharges on a 4 to 6, so it can turn invisible a little more often instead of just the one-time short or long rest.
Right. Yeah, and in terms of using a warlord, it's naturally going to be with a large group of the other Duergar. These would not be like rowing with guards, or if you like run into a Duergar mining operation, there's not going to be a warlord there. This is going to be an intentional thing.
Unless you reflavored it
you would generally fight
as a mining lord.
Ooh.
Duergar foreman or something.
Yeah, there you go. last one here is the Duergar Zororn. And this is a specialist who constructs weapons using a mixture of alchemy and psionics. So it is a challenge rating 2, AC of 18, HP of 26, so you might be able to use it for a round. It has its normal resilience and sunlight sensitivity, and a couple actions that are brand new to it. First one being the Fire Lance. So melee weapon attack, +5 to hit, with disadvantage if the target is within 5 feet of the Duergar, and has reach of 10 feet. So keeping him at a distance. Does 1d12 plus 3 piercing damage, plus 1d6 fire damage, or 2d12 if the Duergar is enlarged. So that at least is unique, and I like that aspect. And you could easily throw a shield on these guys and have them join the ranks of the stone guards. And I mean, hey, you could maybe even throw the phalanx formation trade on them as well, give them advantage on it as they kind of take the second row of things. That's getting into
that'd be cool.
a level of wargaming that I don't know if 5e is particularly suited for. In a way, like, we're trying to do that with the campaign we're playing right now with a lot of, like, war game level shenanigans, and, you know, it works in some ways, it doesn't in others.
Right.
Lastly is Fire Spray. Recharge of 5 or 6. So from its Fire Lance, the Duergar shoots a 15-foot cone of fire, or a line 30 feet long and 5 feet wide. Each creature in that area makes a DC 12 Dex saving throw, or takes 3d6 fire damage on a fail, half as much on a success.
So basically, it has burning hands that it could make a line if it wanted.
Right. At this point, I'm like just not excited by this stat block, and it might be because I'm getting Duergar burnout. But like, again, we're not getting any flavor. It's one sentence long that just says like, it uses alchemy and psionics, but we don't see that really reflected beyond this Fire Lance.
Right, which is barely alchemy.
Yeah, it just kind of has fire.
Like, yeah, and even the Fire Spray, it takes away the flavor of the possibility of like some like oil or potion or alchemy thing. It's saying from the lance it shoots out fire. It's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the implication, I think, is that
Right.
it's an alchemist instrument. Like,
Yeah.
they're shooting burning oil out of a lance.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's something. I guess just with every other one of these having like some art tied to it and giving us something to try and evoke more emotions out of, I'm just not getting anything out of this one.
The lack of art, I think, is the biggest issue with this chapter.
Do you actually think that?
Yes, actually.
Okay.
Other than the breadcrumb trail, which is either just irresponsible and they knew it would bother podcasters, or an important revelation that we've been the only ones to start uncovering.
But like, look at the Mind Master. The Mind Master was one that we talked about last episode, but that has like this really, really cool art of a Duergar who looks like is psycho even for a Duergar, and is like holding this blackened heart. And the stat block itself has some pretty interesting aspects to it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas as this one, it's like both challenge rating 2, both Duergar. What does this one get? A lance. It feels like they started running out of ideas and they had a quota.
You know what would be pretty good? You put this guy on a strider.
Oh,
How about that?
yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah. Now he gets a 10-foot reach on that strider and probably doesn't have to worry about burning his friends as much with that fire spray. So that's cool. And you know, there's probably ways that you can flavor it. If you want to flavor the fire spray as them like taking out a potion and like pouring it into the end of their lance that they then like light one side of, and just whoom, a plume of fire comes out. Cool. All right. You know, you got something. I guess I would hope that there's more to this alchemy aspect of it that's actually shown in the stat block or in art, either way. But instead it's just like, we'll throw it in there.
Yeah, also a lot of times when I think alchemy, I don't think fire.
What do
Not
you think,
directly,
Kevin?
at
My
least.
mind doesn't go there.
Gold?
Poison?
I just think of the
And acid.
infinite bag of Molotovs from the original take on the class.
Well, it's alchemy, so it's not. Yeah, I don't know. I think of gold. I'm with Will there. So, kind of a lackluster one to end things on, but that's the last one we got. Overall, I think there's a ton of great Duergar stat blocks, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is...
I did not realize there were so many in here until we started doing this.
Mordenkainen does this a lot, but it's great. This has a ton for low-level encounters. You can do just 1 through 10, so many different ways to fight these things.
Right. Yeah, and I think we talked about that last time as well, where since these are creatures you would not expect to fight one-on-one just about ever, maybe the Despot, because it's so high challenge rating you can get away with it. But even that's probably going to have a couple minions around it. With the okay challenge rating, like we're not looking at 1/4 challenge rating stuff. So if you throw a couple challenge rating 3 creatures at a level 7 to 10 party, you will challenge them. It's not going to be a deadly fight, but it's at least going to be a fun fight. So I think there's a lot here for any levels to make a fun, interesting fight. And you have so many pieces, it's just a matter of how you put them together and what fight you're trying to do.
Something to also note in this book that I do like, if you are looking to create some of these encounters, if you are in the Underdark, they have the Duergar tables in the Dwarves and Duergar chapter, which lets you roll on these tables and create accurate party compositions with purpose and special allies that you can throw at your parties. And there's some wacky ones in there. You want to have a shield guardian attached to the Duergar buds? That'll be fun.
Yeah, I didn't even see that. This is actually really cool. It gives you a lot to work with. And purpose of raid, special circumstances, names, why not? That's really cool.
Yeah, this is a great book. Which I think I've been saying for years, but a lot of these books are just full of fun stuff.
Yeah, overall, I'm really happy with the Duergar and all the different stat blocks and tons of versatility there. Could very easily make a campaign or a large adventure centered around them without it getting dry and boring.
The only final thought I have is a warning to DMs, because I think I have done this in the past, is with all of these different stat blocks, I think there's going to be a lot of desire to put one of each into one of these fights. And then you're trying to manage 8 different stat blocks in a single fight. And that can get really, really difficult. So keep that in mind when you're putting these together, is a couple of smaller fights is, with 3 stat blocks is going to be a lot easier to manage than one very large fight with a warlord and 5 soul blades and 2 stone guards and a despot and all these things that you're just jumping around trying to remember what each of their specific things are. You'll just forget stuff.
Right. Yeah, I will totally get behind that, because the players don't care how complex the stat blocks are behind your DM screen.
If anything, it can be, I want to say, a little bit annoying as a player.
You don't learn anything. That's the issue. It's everything is new.
Yeah. As a player, I feel like you want to have that new thing. You get that new thing, and now it's a matter of, we need to figure out what that new thing is and how to work around it. And if there's 20 new things in one fight, you're just I don't know. Just keep hitting shit. I'm overwhelmed.
Right.
All these Duergar have just turned into large-sized creatures, and they keep whacking me for 20 damage, and I guess one of them has a fire lance. I don't know.
Cool, but I got nothing else on Duergar. I think we're good to move on to our final segment.
All right, let's get into Ask Monsters and Multiclass. Woo! Play the music, Kevin.
Nah.
Wow, what a horrible song. That's what we get for going royalty free. Nah.
Wow, dude, that was a banger.
All right, so this question comes from user Glum Creature. Interesting name. So Session 0, for me, has been a crucial aspect to starting an adventure off running. It can really bring out the best in all your players when they know the setting and any plot hooks they can use. How do you feel about Session 0s? How do you run them? And just some general excite for the Session 0 guide coming in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So, Session 0s. Let's just start with defining what that is, if by some chance you don't know. Session 0 is a chance for the group to come together away from the actual playing of the game to talk about game expectations. And I think it's been a really popular topic recently, as a lot of issues that we see come up at tables usually spawn from not laying out clear guidelines in Session 0. So, with that said, how do you guys feel about Session 0s?
Just to clarify, it's before you start playing. You said just come together outside of the game.
Oh, sorry.
It's like, literally Session 0 before Session 1.
Yes.
I mean, it's hard to say anything against the concept of a Session 0. Overall, great idea. That being said, we as a group have never formally done one. Because you have to take into account who you're playing with. Like, our groups, it's generally us three, and we know each other really well, and then a few other friends who we also know really well, and we are in pretty regular contact with and kind of know what we're all interested in a game, and we just kind of have casual conversations leading up to starting, like, a new campaign.
Right. So, and that is true. We've never had, like, hey, everybody come over, and we're going to take 3 or 4 hours to talk about what the game is going to be and make our characters together. We don't do that. We do cover everything that I would expect to cover in a Session 0, especially when we have a new person. But even still, saying like from a veteran perspective of, in the sense of playing with the same people over and over and over, you don't need to spend as much time talking about the what is and what isn't allowed in your game. And it becomes more important to really set the stage for what campaign are you trying to run, and making sure that everybody's on the same page there. Because that's something that I feel like I've run into issues with, really with just one person multiple times, who doesn't, or, you know, for whatever reason, we're just not on the same page of what the campaign is going to look like or what the gameplay is going to look like. But as you said, like, we'll have these conversations beforehand. Usually it's like, hey, this is the game that we're going to run. And then we talk about characters and we talk about how this is actually going to work for everyone.
Right.
The one aspect that I think we don't do that often that can work really well for groups, and I've heard a lot of success around, is using Session 0 to tie each other's characters together. And again, I think that's something that we don't do too often for whatever reason. That's just not how we want to do things. Totally fine. But I have heard a lot of groups like the idea of, you know, use Session 0 to come up with how you've heard of this other party member or a rumor about yourself that other players have heard. And that can really help kickstart the role playing in a way that you just feel like you have some knowledge of each other and you're not just going into things completely blind the first time that you're playing. To some extent, I like that blindness and having to learn everybody's character from zero.
I like both. I can see.
My biggest issue is there's this kind of default, spoiler alert for Out of the Abyss, you start in jail and have no reason to know any of the people there. That makes sense. It's very intentional. What the hell's going on? But a lot of campaigns, it's all right. Why are we all on this adventure together? It's like, because I want to play D&D on Tuesdays at 7:30. Just throw enemies at me and tell me where to go, please. And that's fine, and it's a good way to get started. But it is a little rough around the edges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know that's the type of thing that Session 0 should have come out, to be completely honest, where if you're the type of player who says, I just want to show up and have enemies thrown at me, why are you asking me about my backstory? And the person says, the DM says, hey, I want to run a really role-play heavy game. There's not going to be much combat. then yes, that stuff should come out in session 0, and you should be able to work that stuff out beforehand, so that way it's not 6 months of trying to work your campaign to suit them, or them just getting frustrated because the party doesn't want to do what they want to do. You know, that's the joy of a session 0 and having these conversations beforehand.
Right. Yeah, like, so when you're saying type of campaign, this is the type of stuff, like that was one example where, I want to just really role play heavy, not much combat, and somebody's really just looking for combat after combat, like a mega dungeon. In that sort of case, I don't think there's any really kind of coming to a middle ground. It's just that one person's probably not going to play in that campaign, right. And that's okay. No one should be forced to, and the rest of the group should not be forced to completely change the idea that they had around one person. Or maybe the idea is, I want to run a really like lighthearted, silly, over-the-top comical campaign, and somebody gets really annoyed with all that sort of stuff and really kind of wants a more realistic, heavy, sort of grim, dark type campaign. It's like, that's all stuff that should come up beforehand. It shouldn't be a surprise.
Right.
And then for that's important for anybody, even like groups of people who know each other really well. We still do that just to make sure we're all like on the same page. They have characters that fit, that sort of stuff. It's also a good time to talk about what sort of races would be available.
I would say just expanding that, like
that,
just broad, like what mechanics are okay. Are there any like table home rules that are going to come up? That one I think is always really important, the home rules aspect. Now, we've talked about home rules before, how it just needs to be a table conversation. But when you're with new people especially, you need to say, hey, these are our home rules. So that way this isn't a surprise to you later.
Yeah, because some of them could kind of impact how you would like made your character. If I knew that, I wouldn't have made this choice.
Right.
In Warlocks, you come to the table and your Warlock's completely broken.
Right.
Like, yeah, no, Warlocks are int in this world. You're just going to suck at everything for a while until you get 4 stat ups.
So then the other side of things, which is coming at it from a brand new table. Maybe it's just one new person. Maybe it's a whole group of new people. This is something where I think a lot of people want to say that it's a group thing, like just like the session 0 becomes what everybody in the group needs it to be. But I would heavily disagree with that and actually say that the DM is the one who needs to take a lot of responsibility and take charge with your session 0 and be the one who talks about really most of everything. Because when you're a DM for a brand new group, you are kind of the focal point. And it's really your job to set the expectation. And so, you have to be the one to have the uncomfortable conversations. And that's like, when I start with new people, first thing I always say, well, one of the first things is, hey, you know what? Gore is going to be like R-rated, if not more, because I absolutely love over-the-top like gore descriptions. I think it's just silly fun, and I love that. But when it comes to other adult themes, I want to keep that PG-13. And if you step outside of that line, you're probably going to be kicked out of the table. Or, we'll have a nice conversation and you never do it again and whatever. But the point is, I view that as the DM's responsibility. It shouldn't be up to a player to bring up those kind of uncomfortable topics. The DM's the lead, and they got to take some charge there. And I think that's hard for people to grasp.
Dungeon Master. And it's their table, you'll make the counterpoint that it's not their table if everybody leaves, but that's what they're coming to, and they have to set the stage for this stuff.
Right. That's what session 0 is for.
At the same time, though, I don't know if I'd phrase it as like the DM is dictating to the group, this is what's okay and this is what's not. I mean, there needs to be general buy-in. Like, let's say you're trying to, playing with people from work. I know you've mentioned that recently. And you say your gore thing and someone says, actually, that type of stuff, I'm really sensitive to that. I really want to play this. But if you're going into really detailed about people being sliced open and entrails falling out, I know I'm going to be uncomfortable. Could you rein that in for me a bit? I think that's within their right and they should bring it up. And
you are 100%.
Imagine go, yeah, you're right.
100%. When I'm saying it is less about what the DM says goes. And you're never going to have a time where the DM's like, ugh, I don't really like gore. And all the players are like, I love gore. And the DM's like, well, what you say goes, and like the DM's vomiting while making their own descriptions.
And then he split the goblin in half. Tell me about the entrails.
So reining it in, I think you're totally right. That's like perfectly acceptable. My main point is that it is the DM's job to bring it up in the first place. Where I don't expect the players to have that responsibility. Now, yes, you should definitely feel comfortable coming to the table and saying what is going to bother you. And everybody should be on the same page with that. I mean, without a doubt. Mm-hmm. I guess what I'm trying to do is just put a little bit of that responsibility on the DM to say, hey guys, what bothers you? This is what I like to run, and this is how I want to do it. Right. Can you all tell me what better way is this? Because it's uncomfortable for the players a lot of times. If somebody says like, hey, I don't want any hand holding in my DM in my D&D games. Hand holding makes me uncomfortable. They might feel embarrassed to say that because, that's like, oh, well, it's silly. Why would I feel uncomfortable about that? But, if the DM kind of opens up the table to that discussion in either one-on-one conversations or maybe the session 0 if everyone's comfortable, great. But it needs to be brought up, and you can't wait for the players to do it, I don't think.
Right. Yeah, that's if it's not coming up, DM needs to make sure it comes up. The one-on-one thing is big because I think this might be a lot of times people are uncomfortable to bring someone up in the big group, but just kind of message it or say it to the DM separately, and it's like, yeah, sure, I'll make sure that's left out of there. If I see things going that way, we'll make sure we steer it away, that sort of thing. And then there's the other option. I've gained some popularity recently. I'm drawing a complete blank on the name. It's like a sheet of paper, a questionnaire, has a big title across the top, where it has a bunch of possibly sensitive topics, and you mark your comfort level with them. And that could be done almost anonymously, really. That's also another really, that's kind of the, especially for a completely brand new group where like nobody knows anybody. I mean, that's probably your best bet. I don't think there's any harm in doing that. For like us, where we've all known each other for years and years and years and know each other's lives and what we're comfortable with, and I don't think we need to fill it out every time.
And I think that's what a lot of people, because that was all ablaze on Twitter when it came out. And of course, when something's on Twitter, you're going to see the people who say like, oh, that's a horrible idea. Like these damn snowflakes, whatever. It's because they can't get the idea in their head that like, hey, this is not for the people you've been playing with for 20 years. You guys have been playing together forever. Right. This doesn't, if you don't think it's worthwhile, then don't use it. But it's a tool here for people who haven't been playing together, that they're brand new and they need a comfortable way to figure this information out. Here it is. Go for it.
Right.
So other things to cover in session 0. Continuing with that idea of brand new, and we kind of talked about like, explaining what the campaign is going to look like. Rule familiarity, I think, is a good thing to cover. Like when I talk with my coworkers who I've been DMing for, they're all brand new, and I tell them like, hey, I would love if you guys spend some time learning your characters, but I also understand this is something we're doing once a month, and I don't expect you to have absolutely everything down. I'm going to be a little bit light on the rules, and I expect, everybody just kind of be patient with each other. Whereas at our main game, I have a hard time letting new people in because I think they'll be intimidated by our knowledge of the rules. And like I like to have almost like a stepping stone where it's like, yeah, let's play a couple games together. And oh, you seem like you're getting this. Great. Want to come to our actual game? Because we're hardcore about it. I mean, seriously, we're like,
yeah, you don't pull punches.
Right. And it would make it difficult for me if I was trying to like take it easy on one character compared to everybody else.
Yeah, I get that, because the argument could be made that's like, since we've all been playing so long, then we could really help them. But at what point does that become annoying, where they just feel like they're being just kind of coached and bullied by the rest of the table to do what they're being told to do, instead of being able to just play their game?
Exactly. And I think that can feel like a weird spot. And I'm not saying you can't let new people in. Obviously, that would be silly. And we've had new people start, and they get it after a while. But it's definitely something you have to have everybody be on the same page with. Where if I say, I want to run a high-level, combat-intensive campaign for the next 3 months, and also I brought this new person who's never played D&D before, that's like, oh...
That's the best combo. It's like, we're starting at level 15. There's no limitations on rules. Session 0, fuck it.
Right.
I've never played. Oh, just start rolling, man. Just start rolling.
Oh, don't worry. We'll
Something
keep
will
it
land.
simple. Here's a druid. You'll get it.
Yeah, just play a druid.
So here's a list of 14 different animals and 90 spells. You got these?
Yeah.
Oh, and don't forget, druids are really good conjurers. Here's the everything you can conjure.
Yeah. So, just keeping that in mind of, who knowing your audience, I guess, is the best way to put that. Of you want to make sure that everybody has this, not the same level of familiarity, but at least it's a campaign that is fitting to the level of rule familiarity that you have. That can just get out of hand. One shots first.
Yeah. I think that pretty much covers in session 0s, though. It's the make sure everyone's on the same page with the type of campaign being run in terms of roleplay or combat heavy, lighthearted, dark, whatever. Like the universe, understand it, know what races and type of classes and behaviors are to be expected. The mechanical side of things, home brewing, how hard is this going to be, easy, blah, blah, blah. And then the whole comfort level. There's a term for that. I cannot remember it. It's not comfort level of things. I don't know.
That actually does remind me, though. It's the kind of almost opposite of a session 0. If you are a less experienced DM, put in the time to read the material. Just like, this game has gotten out of control. Just crack open the races page on D&D Beyond. It's just shit I haven't even heard of, and I do a podcast on this stuff. Your players can now come to you with elephant people, blood hunters. Try your best. Listen to podcasts. Maybe comment on their subreddits. But yeah, be prepared for shenanigans because they're just adding more every single book.
And to add on to that, if you are a new DM, don't be afraid to say, no, don't use that book. I'm sorry, we're not going to do Xanathar's classes. Sorry, guys, I just started playing, and I know there's all these subclasses, and maybe you think one is really cool. Let's just play for 3 months, and if we want to end this and move to different classes, great. But please bear with me as I get the handle on these rules. Will keeps telling me to read the DMG, and I'm only 50 pages in. Please.
No one's read that friggin' book. It's I wonder if there's rules for climbing ladders. It's page 242, you idiot, that came out 7 years ago.
Yeah. No, I think that's it. But I will want to add just one last bit that I probably could have added in the promotional minute. If you are on any of our social media, please do feel free to reach out and let us know how you feel about episodes or thoughts on them, or totally unrelated D&D thoughts. I mean, please just post them. When I wake up and I see a new post on our subreddit that I didn't personally make, it always makes me extremely happy. So keep that stuff coming. I love the discussion, and it's nice having this little community of over the top nerds, and I don't have to worry about sifting through pages and pages of art on our D&D. I had to. It's a great subreddit for D&D art.
Cool. All right, well, with that, thanks for listening.
Next time on Monsters and Multiclass.
Join us for part 1 of our Tasha's Cauldron of Everything comprehensive guide and overview. We'll cover subclasses and some rules and new book.
Oh, proficiency bonuses!